A group of Russian tanks and armored personnel carriers moves out to launch an assault. The unit consists of 7 vehicles in total, 3 tanks and 4 APCs, and they briefly regroup in a small settlement before pushing forward. Moments later, one of the tanks in the convoy becomes the first target. The operator engages the system and launches the first Javelin missile. Drone video footage confirms the hit. A closer look reveals the tank has been completely destroyed. Yet this is only the beginning of a disastrous chain of events for the Russians. A second Javelin is fired, another direct strike, another massive explosion. Then a third missile arcs into the sky. The target remains the same, and once more, the hit is flawless. Meanwhile, an armored personnel carrier tries to withdraw. As it attempts to escape, Ukrainian forces stop the vehicle with an RPG strike. At the same time, the remaining tank in the convoy tries to return fire while maneuvering. But that effort doesn't last long. The next hit makes it clear the tank has no chance of surviving. One of the previously damaged vehicles erupts moments later. Its turret, several tons of metal, is hurled into the air. Drone footage captures the burning wrecks of Russian armor scattered across the area. During this chaos, another APC pushes toward a clearing in the forest. It tries to position itself to deploy Russian infantry. As the soldiers prepare to advance, the operator needs only a few seconds to lock on. The vehicle attempts to change direction to escape, but the operator fires. The armored carrier is blown apart instantly. Russia commits more than 100 armored vehicles to conduct a large-scale, multi-directional assault on Ukrainian positions. But what will this bold push ultimately lead to? Ukrainian cluster munitions strike a tank directly. Shortly afterward, an APC is sent forward for reconnaissance. Let's follow this maneuver. Artillery takes it out with a precise strike. The next APC in line is also immediately targeted. One of the Russian tanks tries to maneuver around the destroyed vehicle and hits a mine. The group trailing behind drives straight into the minefield. A tank is halted by a violent explosion. Another APC at least acts cautiously and halts its approach. But the movement of the second tank is entirely unnecessary. Meanwhile, one of the Russian corps reaches the front line. The leading tank is equipped with a mine-clearing system, but the passage is blocked by a disabled Russian APC sitting right in the cleared corridor. This jams the route and disrupts the entire assault. An APC attempts to bypass the blockage and hits a mine. Another vehicle tries next and is also blown up. Ukrainian artillery pounds the stalled Russian armor, inflicting heavy losses. Chaos and panic take over. Rushed maneuvers lead to deadly outcomes, just like in this example. Fragmentation munitions quickly eliminate immobile targets. At this stage, Russian forces have already lost dozens of tanks and APCs. Their armored losses continue to rise. An FPV kamikaze drone slams into a tank. Another angle shows the impact even more clearly. An APC pushes forward. A drone crashes into it first. Then, the vehicle becomes stuck in the minefield. Meanwhile, another Russian convoy is stopped in a different area. One SUV, one truck, an MTLB, and an APC are targeted sequentially. The operator selects the SUV first. The vehicle bursts into flames after the hit. The second drone dives toward the MTLB. It is struck. The third drone targets the APC. The ammunition loaded on top detonates in a massive blast. The final blow is delivered when a drone slams into the truck. Footage reveals the truck was carrying a significant amount of explosives. Another Russian attack ends in complete failure. Ukrainian forces detect a large armored convoy belonging to the Russian army advancing toward their lines. Nearby, 2 Leopard tanks are already positioned and waste no time locking onto the target before launching their attack. As the lead vehicle in the convoy rolls over anti-personnel mines, one of the Leopards identifies the second vehicle and destroys it with a single, precise shot. The next hit strikes an armored personnel carrier with perfect accuracy. The German-made tank begins firing as if it were on a training range, delivering one precise shot after another, rapidly diminishing the strength of the Russian assault. Panic spreads among the Russian infantry, who abandon their vehicles in a desperate attempt to escape. But not all of them succeed. Meanwhile, Russian APCs push into the settlement, dismount their infantry, and quickly retreat. The Leopard repositions once more and resumes firing. Its first shot hits the target, followed by another. The damaged armored vehicle is completely neutralized. The tank immediately shifts its focus to the next target and delivers a devastating blow. Now, attention turns to the enemy infantry, who have spread out inside several buildings. As the Leopard approaches, it opens fire. Each shot further reduces the enemy's ability to respond. After destroying its initial target, the tank quickly pivots toward the next building. Inside this structure, a Russian squad is attempting to hold its ground. The footage clearly shows the Leopard facing the building head-on. The tank switches to a specialized high-explosive round to maximize structural damage. It circles the building briefly, firing a few additional rounds to ensure the threat is eliminated. 2 Russian tanks are advancing across the field. A Ukrainian Leopard tracks them from a distance and moves into the optimal firing position. It halts, aligns its barrel, and fires. The first shot is perfect. Then a second round follows, another direct hit. At this point, the attack is effectively halted. When the Leopard crew receives intelligence that 2 additional Russian tanks are advancing several kilometers away, they decide to reposition and intercept. By the time the Leopard reaches the area, approximately 1.5 kilometers separate it from the enemy. The gunner takes aim and fires. Elsewhere, Ukrainian forces identify a building being used as cover by enemy elements, prompting an Abrams tank to move in after receiving target coordinates. The Abrams adjusts its gun, fires, and hits the building with a single shot. A second round causes the weakened structure to collapse completely. Meanwhile, Russian forces have launched an assault on the settlement. A Bradley fighting vehicle is the first to enter, unleashing suppressive fire. Its mission is to break the enemy's defensive resistance. Shortly after, an Abrams joins the operation, firing repeatedly at buildings from which enemy fire is detected. The Abrams systematically destroys enemy positions. This is what timely support looks like in battle. While the settlement remains under pressure, a Russian tank attempts to eliminate the Ukrainian defensive line. But the tank makes a critical mistake. It fails to notice the Bradley arriving to provide support and exposes its weakest armor toward it. Bradley seizes the opportunity and disables the tank with a clean, decisive shot. It then continues advancing toward nearby structures while maintaining fire. The Russian tank is fully neutralized, Ukrainian troops are rescued, and the enemy is forced to withdraw from the area. A Ukrainian drone hunts down a retreating Russian tank and strikes it. The tank comes to a halt. A second drone enters through the open driver's hatch. The shape's charge reaches the ammunition compartment. Flames consume the vehicle. The next target is an armored personnel carrier. A drone collides with its front. A moment later, an enormous explosion obliterates it. The APC fails to make it through the minefield. A drone attacks from the rear. Another from the front. Flames engulf the entire vehicle within seconds. Then a devastating explosion tears it apart. As the failed assault continues, yet another Russian APC catches fire. The ammunition inside detonates repeatedly. Flames swallow the entire hull. Moving on to the next scene. A grenade falls into an armored vehicle. The explosion ignites a fire. The ammunition cooks off yet again. Now the vehicle beside it is in danger. Flames spread, and the risk of an explosion grows. It clearly carries a large amount of ammunition. A Ukrainian drone slowly approaches the abandoned armored vehicle. The strike is successful, and the vehicle ignites. A massive explosion follows. The camera returns to the wreck, showing the interior completely blown apart. Thank you for watching. The attack on the Russian convoy was a striking example of how quickly tactical superiority can shift on the battlefield. Stretching across hundreds of kilometers, the Russian forces advanced with a mix of armored personnel carriers, tanks, supply trucks, and reconnaissance vehicles. Yet the firepower carried by this convoy was not enough to compensate for the uncoordinated and overly confident push into hostile terrain. As the convoy moved through forests, open fields, and narrow dirt roads toward Ukrainian positions, aerial surveillance was already underway. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones tracked every movement, providing real-time data on the direction of the advance and the exact types of vehicles involved. With this information, Ukrainian forces were able to identify the convoy's weakest points, bottlenecks, mined corridors, and tight areas where armored vehicles couldn't maneuver freely. The first blow fell upon the tanks. Javelin operators, working in coordination with night vision drone units, identified and targeted the lead command tank. Once this tank was destroyed, the convoy's primary communication link collapsed, forcing the remaining vehicles into disorganized movement. The massive explosion and thick smoke cloud caused the rest of the column to hesitate. Then the convoy entered the minefield zones. Although some tanks were equipped with mine-clearing systems, the dense vegetation and uneven terrain drastically reduced their effectiveness. The narrow, safe corridor became completely blocked by a disabled armored vehicle up ahead, turning the entire segment into a stationary, vulnerable line of targets. This was the moment Ukrainian artillery units were waiting for. As soon as the convoy came to a halt, HIMARS launchers, M777 howitzers, and drone-guided artillery fire rained down on the immobilized vehicles. The first explosions targeted the center of the formation, while follow-up strikes with fragmentation shells ignited the ammunition carried inside several trucks. One supply vehicle loaded with rockets erupted like a firestorm, sending deadly shrapnel across the formation. A number of armored personnel carriers attempted to escape, but FPV drones quickly intercepted them. These kamikaze drones pursued the moving vehicles, adjusting their course until they struck the engine compartments, the weakest point of any armored platform. Seconds later, massive internal detonations tore the vehicles apart. As the chaos intensified, Russian infantry abandoned their burning vehicles and scattered into the surrounding forests. But open ground offered them no safety. Thermal-equipped FPV drones pursued them relentlessly, striking soldiers attempting to take cover in trenches or behind wrecked vehicles. Explosions shook the area as multiple armored platforms went up in flames, sending shockwaves through the forest. Meanwhile, the rear elements of the convoy struggled to understand what was happening at the front. Thick smoke, ruptured fuel tanks, and secondary ammunition explosions echoed for miles. With command structure collapsing, the vehicles had no coordinated fallback plan. Although the main strike lasted less than 10 minutes, its impact was devastating. Dozens of vehicles were destroyed, many burned down to twisted scraps of metal.